Well, hello, scientists. It's August 24th, 2022. This is Updates from the Lab, a Twitter space for Osmosis, the Interchain AMM. Seems like there's been quite a bit of stuff bubbling up and happening. I did want to just quickly mention that, well, okay, so this is a question that's came up last week, I think, and or whatever, it was on off week, and the guy said, I'm excited for Osmosis Spaces today, would love for Sunny, this isn't exactly Osmosis land, so maybe we can hold on to this later, but it's a bigger question about, I would love for Sunny to share his thoughts on the merge, specifically moving to proof of stake, where large US validators like Coinbase would censor transactions at a block producing validation level. I feel like this is a big moment for the space, maybe a UASF, user activated soft fork. That's not a direct Osmosis thing, but that was something someone asked about.
Yeah, it's been an interesting topic. I mean, I'm sure everyone has heard a little about the tornado cash being U.S. added to the U.S. sanctions list. Definitely a groundbreaking precedent in just like cryptocurrencies, or just like sanctions law, where I think it's the first time that not a user or not an individual or entity was added to the sanctions list, but like a piece of code was added to the sanctions list, which is kind of definitely very precedent setting. And I'm sure there's a lot of unclarity in general around it. But yeah, but that obviously has like triggered this question about like, hey, are validators in proof of stake, and it's not really just a proof of stake thing, right? It's also a miner. I think some mining pools even on Ethereum right now like don't process transactions that originate from any address on the sanctions list. And I think there's a question of like how far are validators gonna take it? Are they, if a validator refuses to create a transaction, are they going to refuse to propose blocks with transactions with sanctioned addresses? Are they going to refuse to vote yes on blocks with like transactions from sanctioned addresses? Are they going to like refuse to stop processing the chain from addresses that have like sanctioned from sanctioned addresses? I don't know. I guess it's like a big question. I think that, I do think there's a little bit of an overreaction from a lot of the crypto space right now, where like, I think that a lot of people are kind of going maybe a little bit above and beyond what is necessary. Like, there's certain requirements that like are supposed to be done to like comply with U.S. sanctions law, but a lot of like projects are like, kind of going way above that. Like front ends have been blocking any address that has been sent money from a address that ever interacted with Tornado Cash, and I think that's like definitely like taking the most a very heavy-handed view of the sanctions law, and I think there's an extent to where there's a lot of like, I don't know. I think a lot of these sanctions stuff are going to be like played out in courts over the next couple months or even years, and I think like the biggest thing is that like we shouldn't be giving in to I think for the government who wants to like build in censorship systems in blockchains, right? Like the worst thing we could be doing is like having like these things like be like rejected in courts, but then like all of the crypto spaces ended up bending over backwards to like comply above and beyond anyways, and it's like that kind of gets rid of the whole point of these like censorship resistant systems. So no, I think that. I don't know. I think that even in Ethereum, we're not going to see like mass scale censorship, and users are just going to delegate away from the validators who like start to do censorship.
Okay. Yeah, I agree that it's basically very complicated right now. It's hard to coordinate around it, like because people have such strong reactions. People are afraid of consequences. But like you said, that sort of, there was a discussion about this on Reddit, and I actually appreciate it, even though it got a little bit petty. But like, there's a granular aspect to this, and the really broad stuff of, like you said, anyone who's received a dime from an address that used Tornado Cash being roped in just seems so broad. I don't know. It just seems like a city who's like, they don't have the time or bandwidth to actually do anything discriminating or discerning about, you know, actual criminal actors and stuff. And that just sounds, it seems lazy. I would say it's like an extraordinarily lazy kind of binary, like you're guilty or not move.
Definitely. Yeah, it seems like it's a very lazy approach of like, you know, oh, we're not going to figure out how to like effectively like comply while keeping like a lot of the purpose of what we're doing, and so we're just gonna like, yeah, it seems like a very lazy sort of reaction to the situation.
I mean, as to like what they should do, I don't know. I don't know how they could, you know, if anything could be done to make it more like, yeah, like you said, accurate or something. I don't know, but like, you know, if that something could be figured out to avoid this kind of broad brush approach, I think it would definitely be better.
So, I mean, you know, we've been chatting a lot with the Void team recently about, obviously this is top of mind for them as well. You know, especially
Yeah.
when you have situations where developers are getting arrested. You know, they're also a little bit trying to figure out what their next steps are and how to go about this. And you know, we've been floating around a couple of ideas of like, you know, in general, I think that like, you know, if you think about it, the reason this like Tornado Cash has gone after so hard was like North Korea basically laundered $1 billion through it, and that's what got like, you know, the government upset, and that, you know, how can we build systems to like, you know, encourage, you know, proper use of the privacy features while, you know, still keeping these things like uh, preventing like nefarious uses of them, right? And like, so we've been like discussing with the team like different mechanisms of going about it. Like one thing that we were thinking of was like, hey, is there technically a way for like governance to de-anonymize certain transactions? So like, let's say you have like, you know, I imagine that, look, if there was $1 billion hack on Osmosis and the hacker like put it through Void, you know, there maybe would be governance might want to choose to like be able to de-anonymize those transactions, right? And like, uh, you know, what is the purpose of the privacy on Osmosis? You know, it's we're not trying to build this like decentralized mixer and stuff. You know, I think for Osmosis we have a very specific use case of privacy, which is we want private trading, right? Today on every decentralized exchange, leaking your entire trading history, where any account can basically say that like, hey, you know, you can go see that like, hey, this address is making this trade, this trade, this trade, this trade, and you can like, you know, you're when you go on a centralized exchange today, you can't see which account each trade is coming from, right? But on decentralized exchange, that's completely visible, and you know, people can just like are copy trading you or like stealing your trading strategies and stuff, and that's really what the goal of like why we want privacy on Osmosis. And so, you know, there's ways that we can actually do this where like, hey, you know, we can modify the circuit in Void or to basically like, hey, instead of being like, you know, you maybe you can't do transfers in the in through Void, but you can, you know, use it as a private trading account. You can do trades privately, but then you have to withdraw back to the same account that originally deposited the money into Void. So that way it can't actually be used for transfers. It can only be used for private trading. So, you know, there's actually, I think there's a lot of design space of like, hey, what can we do to actually like address the underlying problem? And you know, I would assume that most of you know, most Osmo holders and Osmosis governance, like, you know, they don't want to be like helping North Korea like launder $1 billion of hacked money through a privacy system. You know, we have very specific, you know, tangible use cases of why privacy is important, and we should be like, you know, focusing on that and like making it and really pushing that positioning as well, where it's like, privacy isn't supposed to, right now privacy is being pushed as like, hey, it's just like super scary thing that, there's no reason anyone should be used. The only reason you possibly need it is for money laundering. And I think that's the narrative that we need to like shift as, and that comes with like building the technical changes needed to like, push, agree with that narrative.
You're preaching to the choir here. I love this approach. I think it's wise, and sounds like you're doing good work with Void, trying to hash out a path forward.
Yeah, I think the Void team has been, very, they're very much on the same page where like, they understand why privacy is important and why we're doing this, and then making sure we can ship the product that's actually useful to users. And if it's a question of like not having this like sort of middle ground of like privacy versus like nothing at all, I think it makes sense to do the ship whatever we can safely.
It's a tight rope to kind of balance on what you're talking about. On the one hand, we want to preserve users' privacy for very good reasons, but on the other hand, we want to prevent like actual bad actors from stealing money from legitimate users. There's something to be said about the Google mantra of don't do evil, but the reason the whole narrative has shifted around this whole narrative is about money laundering through it's initiated by the Ethereum merge, right? Like this wasn't really such a big topic of conversation when ETH was on proof of work. So right. So the Google motto of "Don't do evil" is kind of I know we need to. Sorry. I'm just thinking about how Ethereum moved from proof of work to proof of stake. And there's more censorability inherent to the system now because they're pivoting to this more permission system. And that kind of
I'm not I don't know. I don't actually agree. I feel like there's the conflating this with the merge seems like people just took two events that seem to be happening in the same time frame and like trying to conflate them or like link them together in some way. There are proof of work mining pools that are also censoring sanctioned addresses as well. So I don't think it's actually that different from the proof of work versus the proof of stake system. I mean, the difference would be is if 1/3 of Ethereum like validators decide to like not vote on blocks that have transactions, but that I don't think any of the anyone's actually been like discussing that so far. I think most of this has been around like people have been like even the mining pools that have been doing it have been like just not proposing blocks with, but they do vote on the ones that have sanctioned addresses.
Well, I mean, the question is how do we think about this in the Cosmos context? Because that Ethereum is just more visible because it's a bigger ecosystem, and that's why that they're positioned to talk about this particular thing. But it applies to us as well. How would we build a system where we preserve privacy without, enabling North Korea basically to launder money?
Yeah, and I think that's why, like for Osmosis, like I said, I think we have a very specific use case of privacy on Osmosis, and I think we should be building our technical architecture to like meet that use case rather than like this generalized like use case that has a lot of like legal risk when we could instead be focusing on like, hey, let's build the thing that's more scope to our use case and actually carries much less legal risk right now. And then we wait for seeing how things develop in courts and stuff, and like I just think there's been like too big of a reaction so early on. Like it's just been like a week or two since the event happened, and there's just so much lack of clarity right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I understand what I think I understand what Widow is saying, but I just want to be clear about like your point, Sonny, that this is not just happening on proof of stake. Like looking at our Reddit thread here, this is from Mountain Rabbit, saying that OFAC sanctioned Blender, which is a crypto mixer on Bitcoin, on May 6th for processing like, I don't know, 20 million from this same group. They also sanctioned this thing called Helix, which is an underground Tumblr for Bitcoin. So there's like, it's happening on proof of work chains as well. It's happening in various, this is, I don't think this is isolated just to proof of stake, although that might, we may have some particular, I don't know, vulnerabilities or specific, approach to it. But anyway, I just want to put that out there.
I mean, the difference is that on Bitcoin, it's higher level applications that are outside of the consensus protocol that are being censored, obviously like a mixer, right? So, but then what we're talking about with Ethereum is censorship at the consensus level. So that's kind of, more dangerous when we talk about that.
Right, and this is my claim as well, of that because the use case of Osmosis is more scope than what Ethereum is. It's more similar. Osmosis's use case is more similar to Bitcoin's, where it's like an app chain, right? And I think that allows us to be a little bit more, finding middle ground on what's possible rather than having to go to the extreme.
Right. So we're not in such a precarious situation as Ethereum 2.
Yeah, I think that means that we have more design space that we can explore.
And so just so I fully understand this, the fact that it's at the consensus level and that, like you're saying, Sonny, that Osmosis is better parallel to Bitcoin and being an app chain. Is there any way to kind of boil that down a little bit more for people who don't fully understand the difference there?
Yeah, I mean, the example is like what I just mentioned about like, hey, we have a specific use case that we need privacy for, which is private trading. We can actually build that without needing the ability to like do private transfers, because that's not enabling private transfers isn't the purpose of Osmosis, right? We're not trying to build a private transfer system. There are people in Cosmos who are building private transfer systems, like Anoma with, they're building these things, but that's like just not what we're trying to build. And so, we can, if we remove that from the scope of what we're building, we remove a lot of legal risk as well, and we focus on things that we actually need to build.
The other thing is, let me see if I understand this correctly, is, if someone like North Korea wanted to launder money through Osmosis, because of the limited scope of the use case, it's not even part of the sort of application logic, right? So they wouldn't really look to use Osmosis as the most viable product to do that.
Yeah, like look, if something like Void had the ability to, let's say, de-anonymize transactions via governance, would someone use it for money laundering? Probably not. Or or like in the option 2, if like you literally just can't even use it for private transfers, would someone use it for money laundering? No, because you can't use it for money laundering, right? Like we should just focus it on like for the use case that we actually need it for.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, it's like a preventative measure. It's like there's a tit for tat here. If you decide to exploit this, we have a backstop.
Yeah.
I think it's like you walk into a convenience store. Are you going to rob it if you know there's security cameras everywhere and you can't get to the tapes? I don't know. It's that kind of. I'm trying to come up with an analogy, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah. Cool. I guess some other stuff that's been going on. I think people may have noticed that they suddenly got like some tokens has magically appeared in their account in the last couple of days, last week or so. It's been a long time coming, but the Rektdrop distribution process has finally, started. And so basically, I think on the Telegram and a couple other spots, there's been we've shared the data of like how much each address is going to get from the Rektdrop. And it's based off of like, which pools you were LPing in at the time and, how much was actually taken from each pool. So we've actually now have distributed the token, everyone's Rektdrop amounts for every token except Osmo, Atom, UST, and Lunacy. Basically, we're just working on acquiring the assets needed to distribute the Atom and Osmo, but all the other assets have been distributed. And then the UST and Lunacy, they have, given that they're not, we could go ahead and acquire these assets from the pool, and then distribute them. But basically, UST and Lunacy on Osmosis is currently like disjoint from the, what's available on Terra Classic right now because, Terra Classic still hasn't activated the IBC channels as necessary. And so what we're going to do is instead of that, we're going to distribute the Osmo equivalent of the UST and Lunacy instead. So, I think that will be better for everyone. I assume the Rektdrop recipients would also prefer to just receive more Osmo rather than useless Lunacy and USDC tokens. So, so the rest of the Rektdrop with the Osmo and Atom should be coming in the next few days. Just most of the funds that have been distributed so far have been the ones that were like returned by the sort of exploiters, and so the rest of the funds are being covered by the foundation, and so there's just some like legal stuff we have to go through to make sure the foundation to get the transfer the assets from the foundation to the Rektdrop multi-sig. Expect those to be coming very soon as well. And then I guess one other thing is we did set a cap on any address that is receiving less than 50 cents worth of Rektdrop. We've actually just excluded those from the Rektdrop for now, just because otherwise it would just be getting a lot of transactions on the chain for if people really feel very strongly that they really want their 50 cents worth of Rektdrop, we can figure out how to do that, but unless there's been a lot of demand for that, I think it'll just save a lot of time and less spam of the blockchain to not distribute those.
That sounds fair. That reminds me, there was another question that from the community on this kind of related to this Luna thing, so I'm just going to throw it out there. They said, now there's another Terra Rebels team who is trying to keep alive the old chain. Staking and burning should start in 3 days from now. Can you please inform about it and see if Osmosis team can contact them and collaborate to reopen IBC?
So I've had a couple of Telegram back and forth with some folks from that project. I've shared with them the sort of steps that would be needed to reactivate it, and they sort of said that they'll get back to us on figuring out where it is on their priorities as well. So if people want to go consider strongly encouraging them and asking them to prioritize opening these IBC channels, please do that. We're happy to provide the technical support for it and like help on like what needs to be done, but our team just doesn't have the capacity to like coordinate it and like do all the work for it. So it really will be up to the So if you have contact with them or you're part of their community, please encourage them to help open these channels again.
Okay, thank you. Ball is in their court. Bug them.
Yeah, we've shared with them like the sort of code changes that we made on the Osmosis side, and they just have to sort of replicate those changes on the Terra Classic chain to do it as well.
Sweet. We do have the ecosystem grants here today with a few grantees. Are there any more updates that you wanted to highlight, Sunny, before we talk to them?
I guess one other thing was people maybe have saw that like the front page of Osmosis website has had a slight redesign to it right now, so you can the swap widget, it kind of has become had a little design refresh, as well as we fixed the slippage, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and the swap widget it takes up a little bit less space on the front page to make space for new stuff to be added to the front page pretty soon. I'm sure people can probably guess what kind of things are going to go there. But yeah, so we were definitely trying to make the front page of Osmosis a lot more powerful. So yeah, looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, I love that development that y'all did with the front end team and everybody. It's very elegant UX. I know I'm just blowing smoke here, but I posted a clip about, I think from that episode where you mentioned it, and I hadn't realized that it was already in place. But yeah, if you guys look at the swap widget now, like, I don't know, to me that the really amazing UX and UI design it's so good you don't even notice it. But well played.
Thanks. Hey, Federico.
Hey, everyone.
Welcome.
Good
How's
to
it
be
going,
here.
Federico? Good to see you. So what's going on in the Osmosis grants program?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, today we published a retroactive blog post that goes into like what the OGP has funded since inception, which was a little over 3 months ago. And like we break down funding by batch, category, contributors, and all this fun stuff. And we also highlight some of the projects we'd like to fund over the next few months, since a lot of the existing RFPs are being worked on already. So we use this post as an opportunity to come up with some new RFPs and highlight them for the community. Yeah, I'd encourage everyone to check it out. You can find it on our website under the blog section, as well as on our most recent Twitter thread, which summarizes the post. And yeah, I can also briefly mention our latest batch of grants, which includes like grants to Margin to deploy their perpetual protocol and their governance contracts on Osmosis. We also funded Yilmos to increase the features available for Osmosis users. And another interesting one was Pine Street Labs, which is building support for Osmosis in their initial release of Wallet OS, which is basically a technical backend to extend wallet functionality for enterprises and custodians to attract more institutional investors to Osmosis. And yeah, I know we have some of our most recent grantees on here today, so yeah, it will be great to hear from them as well.
Awesome. Is there any kind of hint you can give from the blog post about what you're looking for in the new RFPs? I mean, we can obviously just look at it, but if there was anything that you wanted to share about that.
Yeah, sure. So of course, like apps will remain a key focus going forward. To extend the core functionalities of Osmosis, and like funding apps that leverage its product suite will be a big focus going forward. And yeah, infrastructure, definitely another one, particularly like making Osmosis more composable by creating additional avenues for other chains or zones to integrate with the AMM will be great for Osmosis as well. And then, yeah, there's a bunch of tooling that could be built as more and more DAOs deploy on Osmosis. Like, it's important to make sure they can keep operating effectively and efficiently and securely. And yeah, and there's this new grant, like RFP category, we'd encourage applicants to apply for, which is research and there are a bunch of interesting research initiatives that could be worked on to identify new like revenue generating opportunities in the future and help like think about the long-term success of Osmosis as well. And this includes stuff as like LP incentive optimization and research on Osmosis MEV and DAO organizational research and all this kind of stuff. And we've added all these new RFPs to the list as well, so people can check them out and see if there's anything interesting they'd like to work on.
Awesome. Thank you for for going over that. For those of us who can't read, or I mean, we'll look at it. I'm just being silly. That sounds like a good set of targets for people to contribute through the grants program. So is Todd there? I know Todd was the last time I guess last month he was on board and we didn't get to talk to him from Block Pain. Can we shall we start with you, or are you oh wait, you're not added yet. When you're ready, whoever's ready. I guess we have Yieldmos.
Hey guys, can y'all hear me?
Yes, is my mic on? Yeah, yep, I can hear you. I got you here too, Todd. So whoever
Todd, go
yep.
for it.
Todd, let's rock.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome.
So, yeah, I kind of funny. I actually was entirely done with it about a week after it got approved. So, I just need to get through the process of finishing up the process of claiming. But yeah, so what is tender duty? It's when I first started validating, I looked at the various tools out there, and there really wasn't anything that watched for missed blocks per se, like traditional monitoring tools. So, that was Tender Duty V1, and it was really super basic. It just subscribed to the WebSocket and looked at each block, and if it didn't see the signature from the validator, it would send a message through PagerDuty. And so what we were able to do on this grant is extend that out and actually, add a whole bunch of functionality, like, watching node health. Is my node syncing? Put a dashboard on it, and use Discord or Telegram. So yeah, I mean, it's just a whole ton of features that we were able to add to it. And I think, it's I've read a lot of little utilities and tools, and Tender Duty's always been like the one thing that I'm kind of known for in the Cosmos space. It's funny because originally it was like 200 lines of code, but it's expanded quite a ways from there.
Awesome. I'm glad that the grant allowed you to beef it up.
Yeah, and there's more stuff going on right now. One of the things that was requested was the ability to remotely load a config, and so I built some features into it to allow encrypting and decrypting a config and passing in a password to handle that via environment variable. And the reason for that is actually so that it's easy to deploy on a cache. So it will turn out to be about $2 a month to run Tender Duty on a cache. So that's really cool. I think that's going to be useful to a lot of people.
That's great. Yeah, I was I was going to ask you why would you want to remotely load a config, and you nailed it. So,
Yeah.
really
So,
nice to hear about this.
yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and I'll give somebody else a chance to talk about their project here.
Sweet. Yieldmos, and thank you, Todd. Thanks for coming on board. Yieldmos, are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
So talk to us about what you're working on and why.
Sure. First, thanks for the grant. We definitely appreciate it. We put a lot of work into it, a lot of sweat, blood, and tears. We've sort of got two things going on right now. First is well, I guess the general premise is you know, trying to use auth-z, a module within the Cosmos SDK that allows users to grant very specific permissions to another wallet to be able to perform you know, permissioned actions on their behalf. What does that mean? You grant Yieldmos permission to claim staking rewards and then delegate them back to a list of validators. And then that's sort of the first thing that we came out with, and then probably six-ish weeks ago, maybe, we also launched LP pool compounding on Osmosis. So you don't have to give up custody of your asset. You don't have to unbond from a pool and then hand that over to Yieldmos, right? You can just delegate these permissions using the auth-z module that allows Yieldmos to join a pool on your behalf with your assets and then bond those assets to a bonding period that you specify. And we've been working on, you know, making that stable and scaling that. Probably getting ready to move that from alpha into beta very soon. So yeah, those are sort of the two things that we have brought to Osmosis. And why? Well, we started Yieldmos before all this happened, but we all saw what happened to Celsius and Voyager and A3C and those other custodial services that take your money, promise you a yield, and then they might or might not pay out. And you have no idea what they're doing with your money. You have no idea how you're actually earning yield. This sort of goes beyond that too, right? I mean, you look at some of the more traditional DeFi like Yearn, it's the same thing, right? You have to hand over your assets to a smart contract. You have to hand over your assets to an organization. And they then do things on your behalf. And when they have control over your assets, they can do whatever the hell they want with them, right? They're going to promise you that they're not going to do X or Y, but we all know that things don't always work out like that, right? So hoping to be able to, you know, kind of walk back on sort of what's happened in crypto, which is handing over custody of your assets to other people. Like with auth-z now, there should be absolutely no reason for that type of thing, right? Because we should be able to create a system where you can delegate permissions to another organization, to another person, and they're able to do those very specific things, right? And I think we're all might think that this is sort of a foreign concept, because we're all used to giving up our custody to another thing, right? But when you think about, let's say a Google document, right? When you create the Google document, you can give someone 3 different permissions, right? Owner, editor, or viewer. And depending on what permission they have, depends on what actions they can take with that document. And you can sort of extrapolate this to like all aspects of life, right? Keys, prohibit access in buildings, passcodes, parental controls on TVs and tablets. It's all over the place. It's time to bring it to crypto.
Dude, I have this in my household based on how ice cream is divided between me and my wife.
Tell me more.
Oh no, it's just that like if you're gonna eat a pint of ice cream, you have to leave half for the other person unless they. What I'm saying is that there's people draw boundaries. You know, like not everything has to be a.
Mm-hmm.
you know, a clear, like it's yours or mine. Like you can, I was being a little bit facetious, but I agree, 100% agree with you that this is not a weird or foreign concept, you know.
Thanks. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, and I like it. There was one. I had one question about the first part. When you were talking about the with YieldMost, you said something about how you don't have to unbond the LP pool first. This is just like a practical thing. Like, do you have to? Because then when you described it, it sounds like you do have to delegate the permissions, and then YieldMost you creates the LP. It's not like you can take it if you have an LP position now and hand it.
Absolutely, no, that's
over.
exactly
Oh, you
what,
can.
that's exactly what you're doing. You're handing over
awesome.
you're handing over the management of your current LP position over to YieldMost through the delegation of those specific permissions.
Oh, awesome. Okay, that's great. Yeah, that makes it super easy. It's really good UX, you know, user experience, so that like people can just start doing it whenever they want to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and you can turn it off too at whenever you want. There's no commitment. There's no fees being charged right now. It's a completely free service. In exchange, we ask for feedback. We want your feedback, and we want your ideas. We want people to come and present us with this cool yield opportunity that involves 17 different steps. Like I want people to come and talk to me about things like that.
Awesome. Yeah, and is this functional now?
Yeah.
Great. So have at it, folks.
In alpha.
free alpha. Indeed.
There's been some hiccups here and there, but we've worked through a ton of bugs, a ton of edge cases, and scaled it to about 400-ish users at the moment, I want to say. So we're getting ready to move it to beta.
This is great. I just added Nate, who looks like you're also with YieldMost, if you wanted to add anything. Or no, sorry, Yield Maxi, totally different. My bad. Sweet. Yeah, if folks have questions for the YieldMost team, hang around, and I think we should. Or Sunny, does anyone else have questions or stuff they want to ask of Block, of Todd, or YieldMost? Okay, we'll take that as a no. Unless.
What about the good folks at Margin?
Yeah, I was going to say that. What about the margin folks?
Okay, let's go. Let's rock it, Margin.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. Sorry. Well, I'm not sorry, but you're last. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you save the best for last.
Not first, you're last.
Yeah. Welcome.
So, hi everyone. I'm Max from Margin. So, the TLDR of Margin is we are building generalized margin engines for CosmWasm networks, and like our sort of our first product that we want to bring to market are perpetuals. So I would assume most people know what perpetuals are, but they're they're non-expiring derivative contracts for crypto assets. I guess on the centralized exchanges, you can probably find some non-crypto assets as well. But obviously, we're proper crypto heads, so we think that they should be on-chain and decentralized perpetuals, and that's what to do. And our grant from Osmosis is around helping us bring our governance contracts more quickly to mainnet, and so that's what we've been doing. Kind of keeping it otherwise simple is so the architecture of our perpetuals are using a VAM in our sort of V0, but we have some ideas on how to make that more efficient, like how to grow liquidity with the open interest, and also to add like maybe more GMX style price discovery and market making as time develops, but that's obviously all in the works. So for our like V0 minimal viable product that we should hopefully have deployed on Osmosis mainnet as soon as humanly possible, we've actually like literally just got our audit report, so things are ticking over quickly, and quite happy with kind of that. So it's not completely fudged, for want of a better word, and like that you can tell they really looked into it. That's always nice. And yeah, we've also got like a test net live. It's actually on Junos, testnet and head over to our website. You can go and play with it. But someone did actually build a massive position and use all the liquidity yesterday, and it may have actually been me. So don't be surprised when the candlesticks are quite extreme. So yeah, not really sure what else people would like to know. I mean, I guess perpetuals are quite a known concept, but yeah, happy to answer any very deep technical questions.
I have a question about what we have an interest in perpetual. So I was just curious, how are you going to decide on which tokens you're going to support?
So this is a great question. I would almost say you're a plant. So like in our like, I say V not using liberally, but like in our initial state, we want to deploy, we want to be like the perpetuals for the native tokens of each layer one. So on Osmosis, on Osmo, on Juno, and like kind of the sort of the thesis there being like the anti-app chain thesis in a way. So someone from Osmosis is gonna shout at me, but like that. Okay, I'm token holder token X. I'm on, so I obviously have my tokens on L1X. So like I would probably want to hedge my portfolio and use the perp on that network. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not true. But then like kind of come into your question more directly, what like other things would we list is like we get through our governance, to be honest. So yeah, like through our governance, and you know, it's a like kind of what the community want to us, you know, to a certain degree. Obviously, like you're not going to list every single token, but like the in inverted commas blue chip Cosmos tokens, like that's like hopefully they'll be listed on Osmosis. And like the other thing to say there is like, so on an L1, you like we've already got cross margining for your margin account. So like if you have perpetuals positions on an L1 for multiple tokens, like you'll already be cross margined. Then I thought the question you were going to ask, and like quite a lot of people have been asking us about, is like staked assets. Like that's, if someone's got bright ideas of how to do that, like we'd really be willing to listen to us, ideate, for want of another adjective, because there people seem to really like it. I mean, from my perspective, there's a bit of like a pricing problem maybe, but anyway, that's maybe something to discuss, not like off the top of my head on a Twitter space. There's a hand.
Thank you.
Hey,
Sorry.
Hey, what's up, Nate? Welcome. What do you got?
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate the time. Long time power user of Osmosis and all these apps. It's a pleasure to hear from them. I'm curious if the both teams that just spoke, so Margin and Yieldmos, could potentially collaborate to create vaults where you can combine positions in LP pools with positions in perpetuals or options. I've seen it done on other chains like this, where you can create sort of a delta neutral-esque position to create these yield opportunities. So I'm just curious if you guys are thinking about that, or how you think about it.
Have you read my mind? Have you hacked my computer? What is going on here?
No, I'm just yield maxi, man.
Yes, that is what our interest is in perpetuals, is exactly that.
Yeah, so that's what I do manually. I do that manually with my own portfolio. And so I've always wanted to build something or do something in the space on Cosmos, so we can connect on that later. But I just think it's super interesting to be able to offer a vaulted strategies that are, you know, it's like democratizing access to these delta neutral strategies that only like market makers do with high amounts of capital, giving that access to, you know, call it retail or crypto native retail rather. So
Great question.
I mean, from our perspective, like we hope people do that with Margin, but obviously, like you know, given bandwidth, like it's not something we've been like really like focusing our attention on. But like, yeah, one of the people from Secret Network actually keeps mentioning this to me, and yeah, like hope, like if you have want to do some like further discussion later, like totes up for that.
We've done quite a bit of research into this, and at the moment with how auth auth IBC transfers work, or rather the granting of the permission, it's kind of a dangerous permission to give out. So we haven't released anything, but we are trying to get that locked down so that it's a little bit more possible. Up until today, the perpetuals always lived on their own L1, right? You have Injective, and there's a couple products coming out on Comdex, and then there's also the ability to short on Kava. In order for you to be able to properly rebalance things, you need to be able to move assets between networks. But if you have all the assets on one network, or if the margin product is taking care of the liquidity / TVL / whatever on its own, then that changes things a little bit, right?
Yeah, I would.
Right.
Okay.
Can I ask a smooth brain question here, just to rewind for a second? Not to stop the flow, but like, can someone just explain what perps are or perpetuals for those of us who aren't full yield maxi degens?
Yeah, I mean, it's a derivative contract, and like the TLDR is like you buy it at a price for an amount, and depending whether you go long or short, if number go up, you get paid. If number go down, you lose money. Like, very simply. I don't know if someone might have a
Beautiful TLDR. I like how you took out the articles. If number go up.
There's something really interesting about perps, which is when you enter into a perpetual contract, it's essentially like a futures contract that never expires, so you never actually have to deliver. So the only thing you need to post, depends on the exchange, would be the difference between the price you entered at the contract and the current market price, right? And so it's a very capital efficient way to enter into a position, which is why it's interesting to combine that with LP positions, essentially, to hedge risk in a very low cost manner. That's why it's really interesting to combine it. That's just my 2 cents there.
I have to get going because I have a 1 o'clock, but thank you for having me. I appreciate this a lot. And Margin, please follow me so I can DM you. Let me slide into your DMs.
Yeah, I think they're open anyway, but I shall follow you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Yilmos. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Max. I mean, we can take another question, or can we? I'm just checking in if anyone has them. Okay. Well, this has been fairly fruitful. I appreciate everybody hanging out. Great question from Nate and Todd. Margined. Good to see Shango here. Thanks everybody for popping in. And anything to add, Sonny?
No, that's it. Thank you guys.